Hello friend, in this video we will discuss the different types of bearing. So the bearings are the crucial components of many types of machineries and exist in varieties of form and the shapes. There are the dedicated companies which provides the bearings. So we no need to design the bearings or no need to spend the money on the designing the bearing. So we have the different options. So in terms of load carrying capacity, in terms of shapes, form, okay, in terms of the rolling elements, okay, so we have the different options. Okay, you can get the options in the outer ring, inner ring, rolling elements, okay, or the cage. You have the different option. Based on that you can choose. Bearing supports the load, okay, it may be the axial load or the radial load. To avoid the wear and tear and to withstand the load, so we use the bearings. Based on the design, there are different types of bearings are there, like a plain bearing, rolling element bearing, jewel bearing or fluid bearing, magnetic bearing and the flexure bearing. And based on the direction of the load, we have the radial bearing and the thrust bearing. Let's discuss the plain bearing first and the different types of plain bearing. Okay, so the plain bearings we generally call it as a bush bearing or the bushing or the sleeve bearing or the you can say the journal bearing. So there are different names are there. This one is the simplest type of the bearing with a cylindrical shape and there are no moving parts. They are generally used for sliding, rotation and oscillating or reciprocating motions. So we use the plain bearings. Okay, so there are different types of the plain bearings are there, like spherical plain bearings, rod end bearings, bushing and two-piece plain bearing. You can see here the spherical plain bearings, and these are suitable for applications where the alignment and the alignment between the bearings and shaft is needed. So at that time we use the spherical bearings. Also, the spherical plain bearings generally we referred as a heavy duty spherical plain bearing. Next one is the rod end bearing. So the rod end bearings are used in the control rod mechanism and the linkage. Next plain bearing is the bushing. Okay, so the bushing is the most common type of the plain bearing we use in the machineries. So where we don't use any rolling elements. Two-piece plain bearings where two halves of the bearings are separated so that we have the easy assembly and the easy removal of the bearings. Two-piece bearings are generally incorporated in the industrial machineries, so where the larger diameters are required, such as on the crankshaft bearings. Okay, at that time we use the two-piece bearings, so where the very large diameter of the bearings are requirements. For the plain bearings we require the lubrications. Okay, so the proper lubrications we require as there is a direct contact between the bearing and the shaft surface. So next one is the rolling element bearing. Generally we call it as a anti-frictional bearing also. Here we are using the rolling elements like ball rollers, like a cylindrical rollers, needle rollers or the spherical rollers. Okay, like that we use the rolling elements between the inner and the outer ring. Rolling elements bearings are categorized into ball bearings and the roller bearings. Okay, so in the ball bearing, so this one is the most common type of the bearing we use in the machineries and the different applications where we have the rolling elements as the ball. So the ball bearings we have the different applications like in the different devices, okay, and the machineries and the gearboxes, drives, turbines, okay, so conveyor systems, robotics. Okay, so there are different applications of the ball bearings are there. Next one is deep groove ball bearings. So these bearings are also most commonly used. Deep groove ball bearings are the robust in operations and require the little maintenance. It can support the radial as well as the axial load in both the directions. Next one is angular contact ball bearings. So angular contact ball bearings are categorized by the contact angle. So this means that the force that are transferred from one cage to the outer cage. Okay, like from one ring to the outer ring at a particular angle. So these angular contact ball bearings are suitable for the combined load where the high axial force have to be transferred in addition to the radial force. So the angular contact ball bearing, it is suitable for the axial and the radial load. Okay, so it can withstand the both the load. Next type is self-aligning ball bearing. Okay, so the self-aligning ball bearing is recommended where the misalignment between the shaft and the housing. Okay, so if there is an misalignment issue, then we can use the self-aligning ball bearing. The self-aligning ball bearings are more suitable bearing for the radial load point of view. So it can sustain the radial load. Next ball bearing is the thrust ball bearing. Okay, thrust means axially. Okay, so the thrust ball bearings can support the axial load. The thrust ball bearing can locate the shaft axially in one direction. Now let's discuss the roller bearings. The roller bearings, in that we have the line contact. So in the ball bearings we have the point contact. So because of the line contact, friction is more compared to ball bearings, but here we are having the higher load carrying capacity. With the same size of ball bearings, the roller bearings having the high load carrying capacity. So there are different types of the roller bearings are there. Let's discuss. Spherical roller bearings are work on the principle of self-aligning bearings. Instead of using the ball, we are using here the spherical rollers to match the misalignments between the shaft and the housing. The spherical roller bearings are suitable for high radial load, and partially it can support the axial load also. These bearings are generally used in gearbox, pumps, mechanical fans, blower, turbines, or in the construction and mining equipments also we can use the spherical roller bearings. Next one is cylindrical roller bearings. So cylindrical roller bearings, here we use the cylindrical rollers, and it can withstand a radial load and some portion of the thrust load also. The cylindrical roller bearings are generally used in the power generation equipments, construction equipments, mining equipments, gears, gearbox, okay, electrical motors, blower. So in that we can use the cylindrical roller bearings. Next one is the taper roller bearings. Okay, so the taper roller bearings, in that you can see there are the inner cage and the outer cage with the conical rollers are there. So due to the contact angle, a taper roller bearing can absorb the high radial and the axial force in one direction, and if we use in the pair, so it can support the axial force in both the direction. Next one is the needle roller bearings. This one is the special type of cylindrical roller bearings. So here the diameter is small and length is increased. The ratio of diameter to length is varies from 1:3 to 1:10. So depending upon your requirement and the load carrying capacity. So the needle roller bearings have the high load carrying capacity and are suitable for the radial load. Okay, and if the space constraint is there, we have suppose the minimum space, so at that time the needle roller bearings we can use. Okay, or it will be the good solutions where the space constraint is there. So the needle roller bearings are widely used in the automobile industries, like compressor, transmission, rocker arm, pumps. Okay, so in the agriculture applications also we use the needle roller bearings, and in the construction equipments, okay, and in the power tools and the domestic application we also use the needle roller bearings. Next one is the jewel bearings. Okay, so the jewel bearings are used in the precision instrument where the low friction, long life and dimensional accuracies are very important, such as in the mechanical watches. Now let's discuss the fluid bearing. So the fluid bearing in which the load is supported by the thin layer of lubrications. Here there is no moving parts and there is no sliding friction. So the fluid bearings are categorized into two parts, like hydrostatic and the hydrodynamic bearing. So the next bearing is the magnetic bearing. So this one is a special type of bearings where the magnetic bearing use the concept of magnetic levitation, and this bearing hold the shaft in the air. Okay, so there is a no actual contact between the bearings and the shaft. Here there is no wear and no friction is there, so we can achieve the maximum speed with the help of this magnetic bearing. Next bearing is the flexure bearing. So you can see here this flexure bearing we use for the special purpose or for the special applications. So this flexure bearings don't require any lubrications and provide the very low friction. So friend, so we have discussed the different types of bearings. Okay, so I hope you find this video very informative. So if you like this video, you can like, share and subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.